You're 27, dragging yourself home after a draining 9 to 5 office shift. It's nearly midnight. You collapse onto a cheap, rented couch and scroll endless short-form reels of creators with multiple side income streams. A single corporate layoff notice would wipe out your tiny emergency savings. Every dollar you rely on comes from one employer alone. You feel constant, quiet dread of industry downsizing, yet you write off all side hustle ideas as too time-consuming. What would your entire adult life trajectory change if you built consistent, steady side hustle cash flow starting right now at age 27? Nearly every mainstream lifestyle and career narrative pushes one identical, normalized myth. Landing a stable, full-time salary delivers complete financial safety. Most 27-year-olds accept this framing without calculating the crippling risk of relying exclusively on one revenue source. Few pause to tally the decades of lost compound growth buried in all the free weeknights and weekends they waste, with zero secondary surplus to invest. Here's a landmark 15-year University of Bath study statistic most side hustle influencers never share. Adults dependent on only one paycheck carry 40% higher chronic financial anxiety long-term than anyone holding a secondary steady cash flow stream. That persistent fear of sudden job loss is not a minor temporary stress, it's a lifelong vulnerability baked into single-income living starting at 27. Let's walk through the default life trajectory for the 27-year-old who relies solely on their W-2 salary with zero side revenue. You take home $3,750 monthly after tax, every spare dollar absorbed by rent, utilities, and routine consumer outflows. You hold no consistent monthly investment surplus. All free evening hours wasted on mindless scrolling with no income-generating side project to fall back on. Every minor industry layoff scare sends you into weeks of panic. No secondary buffer to cover basic bills during job gaps. Annual raises only barely outpace inflation, with zero extra cash allocated to compound assets. By 30, your total liquid assets sit under $13,000, all low-interest cash steadily eroded by yearly price hikes. At 47, you're forced to accept every overtime shift to offset rising housing and medical costs, with no passive or side income to reduce work hours. When you hit standard retirement age of 67, your total nest egg barely tops $132,000. Most mid-20s professionals assume a single stable job guarantees security. Yet, this vulnerable cycle is entirely a choice made at 27. Most people completely miss the irreversible multi-decade opportunity cost of ignoring side hustle surplus. Let's run clear, long-term compound numbers using the S&P 500 historical 7% after-tax average annual return. If you build a modest recurring side stream, generating a steady $580 monthly, and auto-direct that full budget into broad market DCA starting at 27 and hold consistent investments until 67, your total portfolio value will hit roughly $1,048,000 by retirement. If you rely solely on your base paycheck with zero side revenue surplus to invest, you finish with just $132,000 in total assets at 67. That staggering $916,000 lifetime wealth gap exists solely based on whether you built side hustle cash flow starting at 27 or stayed trapped on one single salary. Now let's map the parallel life of the 27-year-old who builds low-time, steady side income and auto-invests all extra monthly surplus. You take that identical $3,750 entry-level base salary, carve out small, manageable blocks of weekend evening time for a low-overhead side project, generating $580 consistent extra cash every month. The full-side surplus automatically flows into diversified index ETFs. The second payments hit your bank account. You don't quit your full-time job recklessly. You build a safety buffer, slowly, over years. Every annual wage raise gets split half toward mild quality of life upgrades and half to raising your DCA contribution slightly. By 30, your diversified index portfolio holds over $122,000, generating steady quarterly passive dividends. At 47, your combined investment plus side yearly income fully covers all core household bills, granting you complete freedom to resign, draining toxic full-time roles, or take multi-month unpaid career breaks without financial ruin. By 67, your compounded asset base tops $1.048 million, built entirely from the same modest base monthly income as the single paycheck peer stuck in permanent layoff anxiety year after year. If you're between 25 and 32, relying entirely on one full-time paycheck with no side revenue at all, pause for a moment and share how many free evening hours you have each week in the comments. I'll calculate your projected 40-year compound asset gain if you turn that spare time into steady monthly side surplus DCA contributions. Here's a truth almost every side hustle influencer ignores. The total 40 years of lost compound wealth from never building secondary cash flow adds up to more total money than most ordinary full-time workers earn across their entire 40-year career lifespans. Every free evening wasted with zero side income potential is a chunk of your multi-decade compound growth pool permanently stripped away with no asset gain in exchange. Nearly all side hustle content only talks about small luxury splurges funded by extra cash, yet it overlooks the transformative mental and career freedom dual income streams unlock starting at 27. You eliminate the nightly crippling fear of unexpected corporate layoffs or unpaid medical leave. You gain unshakable confidence to walk away from toxic, underpaid workplace culture because your secondary revenue eliminates financial desperation, forcing you to stay miserable. You lose the constant quiet panic over every industry downsizing headline scrolling across your feeds. These invisible quality of life shifts are just as valuable as rising brokerage account numbers, yet they're almost never discussed by mainstream short-form creators. Have you ever stayed trapped in an exhausting, unfulfilling full-time job solely because your only income source would vanish if you quit? That permanent constraint vanishes entirely once you build steady side cash flow starting in your late 20s. Many late 20s professionals mislabel side income as a trivial luxury spending fund. The core reality is far simpler. Building modest recurring side revenue is not about quick, fast fashion or travel splurges. It unlocks 40 full years of compound growth no single paycheck peer can replicate. Choosing to ignore all spare time income potential doesn't just cost you decades of market returns. It costs you career mobility and lifelong mental peace you can never recover later in adulthood. Building side cash flow young doesn't make wealth appear overnight. It ensures every spare hour you invest gradually builds safety nets instead of empty, wasted evenings. If you've watched all the way through and realize you've wasted years of free weeknights with zero secondary income surplus, hit like and save this breakdown for easy reference. My next upload will walk through low-effort, low-overhead side projects designed for exhausted 9-to-5 workers with limited spare energy. We endlessly scroll social media envying creators with multiple revenue streams, yet we rarely pause to calculate exactly how much lifelong financial safety we surrender by relying solely on one paycheck at 27. Building consistent side hustle cash flow in your late 20s won't make you wealthy instantly, but it rewrites every financial and career decision you'll make for the next 40 years of your adult life. The cash flow safety rules you lock in at 27 become the permanent blueprint for your midlife peace and retirement stability.